In this video, we're going to learn how to use unit multipliers. For each conversion rate, we can create two unit multipliers. Unit multipliers will be fractions where there are equal amounts in the numerator and the denominator, but we use different units to express that. So 1 foot over 12 inches would be a unit multiplier. Likewise, 12 inches over 1 foot would also be a unit multiplier. The question you have to ask yourself about unit multipliers is the numerator and the denominator the same amount? So 1 foot, 12 inches, are they the same amount? Yes, so that is a unit multiplier. And so if we do the others here, I'll have 1 day over 24 hours and 24 hours over 1 day. I'll have 1 quart over 2 pints, 2 pints over 1 quart, and 1 kilogram over 1,000 grams, and finally 1,000 grams over 1 kilogram. Now that we know how to create a unit multiplier, we'll learn how to use them. For our first example, we're going to change 3 feet into inches. So, the first step is to take our starting amount, 3 feet, and to change that into a fraction. Usually that's going to be just as simple as putting it over 1. So 3 feet over 1 is the amount I start with. Now I need to choose a unit multiplier to multiply by. Now earlier we had the conversion rate that 1 foot was equal to 12 inches. And so that shows me the relationship between feet and inches. Therefore, that's what I'm going to use for my unit multiplier. So I'm going to put one of those amounts on top and one of them on bottom. And it's my choice which one goes on top, which one goes on bottom. However, only one arrangement will actually be helpful. So, since I have feet in the starting fraction in the numerator, in order to cancel those out, I'm going to want feet in the denominator. So my 1 foot will go in the denominator, and my 12 inches will go in the numerator. Now, because we have feet in the numerator and feet in the denominator, these will cancel each other out. Now, only inches are left over, which is what we want, so we're ready to multiply our fractions. So, I have 3 times 12 gives me 36, and no units times inches gives me inches. In the denominators, I have 1 with no units and 1 with no units, and so that's just going to be a 1 with no units. And we finish off by dividing. Divide your numbers, then your units. So 36 divided by 1 is nice and simple, 36. And then inches divided by nothing gives me inches. For our next example, we're going to change 3 inches into feet. We're going to try to do this one a little bit faster though. So I'm going to take 3 inches and turn that into a fraction as my starting amount. Now I know that 1 foot is 12 inches still, and so since I have inches in my numerator, when I create my unit multiplier, I'm going to want inches to be in the denominator. Well, my conversion rate says 12 inches, so this will need to be 12 inches, which means my 1 foot will go in the numerator. Now, I can cancel out my inches, and before I multiply, I notice that I can also reduce my numbers as well. So I can reduce 3 and 12 by 3. So 3 goes into itself once, 3 goes into 12 4 times, and now I've made this even simpler. So we multiply. Up top, 1 times 1 is 1. Nothing times feet is feet. Over 1 times 4 is 4. With no units and no units, so no units. Now, we divide our numbers, and then we divide our units. So, 1 divided by 4. We have to be very careful about the order in division. So 1 divided by 4 is not going to be 4. Instead, 1 divided by 4 is going to be 1/4. So if it looks like a fraction, it's going to be a fraction. And then finally for our units, feet divided by nothing is feet. So 3 inches is 1/4 of a foot. Now we're going to change 3 gallons into pints. So I start by making 3 gallons into a fraction. And then I need to think through, what do I know about gallons? Well, I know that 1 gallon is 4 quarts. So I'll use that for my unit multiplier. Since we have gallons up top, I'm going to want my gallons to be in the bottom. And it's 1 gallon is equal to 4 quarts. Now, I cancel out my gallons, since I've got them on top and bottom. But right now I have quarts. That's not what we're looking for. However, it is a step in the right direction. So that means I need another unit multiplier. So now that we have quarts, I need to think about, what do I know about quarts? Well, I know 1 quart is equal to 2 pints. So I'm going to make another multiplier, and since quarts is on top here, I'm going to want quarts on bottom. So 1 quart goes on bottom, and 2 pints goes up top. Now we have quarts on top and quarts on bottom, and so they cancel each other out. Now I have pints left over, which is what I want, so we're ready to multiply. So up top I have 3 times 4 is 12, times 2 is 24. And then look at the units, nothing, nothing, pints, so 24 pints up top. And then on bottom, I have 1 with no units, 1 with no units, 1 with no units. So that'll just be a 1. Finally, we divide. Fractions mean division, so 24 divided by 1 is nice and simple. 24. And then pints divided by nothing is pints. So 3 gallons is 24 pints. Our last 2 examples will be a little bit more challenging to get started, but once they're started, they're going to work the exact same way as what we've been doing before. So we're going to change 3 feet per minute into inches per second. So the trick with this, since there's a per, is that we're going to change our number into a fraction and then put the units into the fraction afterwards. So 3 as a fraction is nice and simple, 3 over 1. Now, feet per minute, feet per minute. Per means divide, so this is feet divided by minutes. And then we know that fractions mean division, so this is going to be feet over minutes. So that means my feet will go on top and my minutes will go on bottom. Now, just like before, I'm going to change my feet into inches and my minutes into seconds. So since we have 2 units that we're changing here, we're going to need at least 2 unit multipliers. So let's start with the feet. It really doesn't matter which one you start with, but we're going to do feet first. So I'm trying to change feet into inches, so we need to think about, what do we know? Well, we know that 1 foot is 12 inches. So that'll be my first multiplier. Just as before, since I have feet on top, I'm going to want feet on bottom. So my 1 foot will go on bottom, and my 12 inches will go on top. It's been a little while since we've talked about checking your unit multipliers. So remember, when you're looking at your unit multiplier, you need to ask, is this amount the same as that amount? If the answer is no, then it's not a unit multiplier. However, we're good to go. So, since I have feet on top and feet on bottom, they cancel each other out. So right now, I'm left with inches on top and minutes on bottom. So if I were to multiply and simplify right now, I would end up with inches per minute, which is not what we want. So we're going to do our next multiplier. Now, since I want to get rid of the minutes and change them into seconds, we need to think about, what do we know about minutes and seconds? Well, we should know that 1 minute is 60 seconds. So that's our next multiplier. Now this time, since minutes are in the denominator, we're going to want minutes to be in the numerator in order to cancel out. So my 1 minute will go in the numerator, my 60 seconds will go in the denominator. And now, since minutes are in the denominator and in the numerator, they cancel out. If we look at our units now, that's gone and that's gone, so we're only left with inches in the numerator. In the denominator, this is gone and this is gone, so we're only left with seconds. So if we multiply and simplify now, this will be inches per second, which is exactly what we want. So we're ready to multiply. Now before I multiply, let's see if we can do some reducing. So I can see that 3 and 60 can both be reduced by 3. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 60 20 times. 12 and 20 can be reduced by 4. 4 goes into 12 3 times and goes into 20 5 times. And I can't do any more reducing, so it is definitely time to multiply. So up top I have 1 times 3 times 1 is 3. I have no units, inches, and no units, so that will be inches. In the denominator, I have 1 times 5, which is 5, and no units and seconds. So, now we're ready to divide. 3 divided by 5 is going to be just like it looks. That's going to be 3/5. For my units, I have inches divided by seconds, which will be inches per second. For our last example, we're going to change 3 square yards into square feet. Now the problem with this is we don't usually have the conversions for square units memorized, but that's going to be okay. So just like before, we're going to take our starting amount, 3 square yards, and change it into a fraction, which, as long as we don't have a per somewhere, is going to be just as easy as throwing it over 1. Now, since we don't have conversions for square units memorized generally, we're not going to move forward with unit multiplier yet. Instead, I'm going to change this into something so that way I can use the conversion rates that I have memorized. So, 3 square yards, well, square yards, the square is telling us that this is yards times yards. So I'm going to change it into that. 3 yards times yards. Now I really want to emphasize here that we had 3 here, and we only have 3 here. So notice the number only gets written once, although the units get written twice. So the square yards is only telling you to do yards times yards. The number still just going to be one number. Now, moving forward, I need to change these yards and these yards into feet. So I know that 1 yard is 3 feet. So I can use that as a unit multiplier. And since we have yards on top, I'm going to want yards on bottom. So my 1 yard will go on bottom, and my 3 feet will go on top. Now, I have 2 yards up here and just 1 down there. So, one of these will cancel with that. Now up top, I have yards and feet. So if we multiply and simplify now, we'll have yard feet, which is not what we want. So I need another multiplier. And since I need to change my other yard into feet, we're going to go ahead and use the exact same unit multiplier we did last time. Because now I have yards on top and yards on bottom again, and so my last yard will cancel. Now up top I've got feet and feet, which if we multiply those together will give us the square feet we're looking for. So now we're ready to multiply. I can't reduce any of my numbers, so we're just going to go ahead. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And then no units times feet gives me square feet all over 1 with no units, 1 with no units, 1 with no units, 1. Divide your fraction. 27 divided by 1 is 27, and square feet divided by nothing is square feet. Now, one last thing that I'll point out here. Notice that we had an equal sign right here. And when we came to multiplying, we didn't use anything over here. Equal signs end up breaking your problem up into different sections, where each section is exactly the same as every other section. So when it was time to multiply, I was only going to multiply those fractions in between these equal signs. And that brings us to the end of our video. I hope that you found it helpful.